Welcome to Season 8, Episode 14 of the Ubuntu podcast. In this episode, we're going to interview Florian Rival about GDevelop. We'll also have some command line love, and we'll go over your feedback. I'm Mark, and joining me this week, once again, are Alan.
Hello.
And Joe.
Hello.
Welcome back, Joe.
Thanks.
So, Alan, what have you been up to over the past couple of weeks?
Last week I added some friends on Facebook.
Aww.
Which I realise is like no big shakes to most people. Although to some people listening to this show, they'll be like, "What? You're on Facebook, you idiot!" But actually, I just some years ago I removed everyone I knew from Facebook and just reverted back to just using it for talking to family and keeping up with the school and stuff like that. And I got lonely, so I added some friends back on Facebook.
And do you feel richer for it?
I'm seeing more photos.
To all the cool parties now?
It's less that. It's more that like people mention stuff, and I feel like I've missed out because they're like, "Oh yeah, this photo of so and so," and I'm like, "What? What? I didn't see that." "Oh, you're not on Facebook, are you?" And then they'll post me a link to the photo from Facebook, and I'll click it, and it will say, "No, this is a private collection. You can't see it." And I'll think, "Oh God!" And that's how they get you. That's how they get you in, isn't it?
Just need to teach them copy image location.
Yeah, or set them up with diaspora. That'll work.
Good point.
Lovely. So, Joe, what have you been up to?
Since we last spoke.
Since we last spoke, I think that was OddCamp when we last spoke.
Yes.
Apart from doing my numerous podcasts, Mintcast and Linux Luddites, cha-ching.
Nicely done.
I have been playing with Sonic Pi.
What's one of those?
Well, Sonic Pi is an application which comes pre-installed on Raspbian, on the Raspberry Pi, and is also technically available for other platforms, although I looked and it involved compiling and Jack, and so I thought, use it on Pi then.
Time for that.
And it's a very difficult thing to describe, really. It's where coding meets music. So you can create music through code.
Right.
And I'm a musician, although maybe I used to be a musician, I don't know. And I know nothing about coding, so I thought I'll give it a try, and it turned out to be incredibly tedious and hard. But you control the parameters of synthesizers and samples. Instead of using a nice GUI like you would with the proprietary stuff like Cubase or Pro Tools or Logic, it's all just a text file. When you save your project file, you are literally saving a text file.
Right.
And so then you plug those parameters in, and some of the demo songs are absolutely amazing, the stuff that people have done with it. But then you follow through the tutorial. I mean, the documentation which is built into it is really, really good, and it just walks you through it. If you've got a whole week or whatever to learn it, then it is potentially doable, because you read through this excellent documentation and it walks you through creating a simple note and then chords, and you can either do it from a coding point of view, or there is a more musical way you can do things with it.
Is it like samples, like a tracker, or?
You can. It's got some samples. It's got some synthesizers that you can trigger, and got various parameters. But you can also trigger samples, of which there are quite a few built in. But you can also load your own in, as well. So it's effectively unlimited. You can create anything you want with it, and it's got effects like reverb and compression and stuff, and it's got all dynamics and everything you could possibly imagine if you're used to making music.
So you approached it as a musician who didn't know how to program. I'm a programmer who doesn't really know much about music. Do you think I'd still get something out of it?
I think definitely, yeah, probably more than me, really, because I'm trying to be a musician about it, whereas you would just be experimenting and you've got more of a programmer's experience. So, but what I was thinking about was Martin, who is sadly absent again this week. Yeah. But he used to be a musician in a previous life, and we all know is a good programmer with Ubuntu Mate. So I'd love to see what he could come up with it.
Cool.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear if any of our listeners have played with it, and if they've managed to create anything awesome, they could send it to us. Show at ubuntupodcast.org. Mark, what have you been doing?
I've been sitting up late into the night playing a game with one of my friends, a game called Don't Starve Together.
Is this a computer game or?
It's a computer game, yes. So there's a game which has been out for a while called Don't Starve, which is a sort of wilderness survival game. You're a guy or a girl with you basically have to survive and don't starve. You have to find food and keep warm and things like that. And they've released an early access version of a cooperative version called Don't Starve Together, where you're both, or multiple people are in the same world, play it online.
Are you together around the same campfire, or
exactly,
are you in different places?
Or you can play it where you just both exist in the same world and you're fighting for resources, or you can do it where you build up a base together.
And does it run on Linux?
Yes, it does.
Does it run on Linux natively?
Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, get it in Steam, if that's what you mean by natively.
In fact, probably not then.
Well, what I meant was not
has some horrible distortion there. In fact, the original can run without Steam, so I don't know if Don't Starve Together can as well.
Awesome. Should we get on with it?
Yep.
So we've got Florian Rival on the line, as it were, who is a developer of an interesting piece of software I discovered recently. Hi, Florian. How are you?
Hi, fine, thanks.
Good. So you develop something called GDevelop, and can you tell us what it is and what it does?
Yeah. So in fact, I always have been a fan of making games, and I think that lots of people want to make games, and most of the time it's a bit difficult because, when you want to make games, you have to learn complicated things like programming and development stuff. So what the software does is, in fact, it provides you with an intuitive interface to create your games. It makes you enables you to design the game and then to express the logic that is making the games alive, in fact, using piece of events, which are logic blocks to create your games. So GDevelop is a software that enables you to create your own games without having to learn programming or development stuff.
So we've talked about tools that are used for education of programming to children. There's tools like Scratch, which has a very drag and drop system. So you grab blocks of code and pull them together. Is it like that, or is there a lot of typing involved? How does someone actually use the tool?
Yeah, Scratch is often used as a comparison. In GDevelop, the system is a bit different because instead of drag and dropping blocks, you have events which are composed of condition and action. And condition are checking that something happened. For example, a collision between the player and an enemy. And action are doing things on these objects. For example, just destroy the enemy. So there is no typing involved because you can create the action and the condition by selecting them in a list and then filling the blank using selectors and things like that. So it's a bit different because you don't have blocks that you have to drag and drop, but at the end you find yourself with the same logic. And in my view, it's a bit more efficient to develop the system I created because it was done to be used to create advanced games.
Okay, so once you've created your game, how do you distribute that? How do people how is that exported out? Does it make a binary? How can someone use it?
Yeah, in fact, there are two ways of playing to your games once it's done. You can either create a game that will be exported to your browser, so you will be able to play it on whatever browser you are using, and you have to host the game on your website, or you could export it as a binary for your operating system, and you can publish them on your website or distribute them the way you want to let player play to it. And finally, I'm working on a way to export to mobile phone and tablets. And for that, you can just create your games for a browser and then package them into an application for iOS or Android.
Nice.
So what sorts of games have been made already by people using this tool?
Yeah, you can see a showcase of games on the website of GDevelop, but there are really different kind of games, like platformer games, a bit like Mario, or also games where you have to shoot on enemies, or even educational games. So that's a different kind of games, and the goal of the software is to make you to make sure that you can create a bit anything you want.
So I've been having a bit of play with GDevelop this morning, and the thing that I'd probably compare it most to that I've used before is a program called RPG Maker, which has the same sort of thing where you can put in sprites and create events, and it has you select sort of predefined logic kind of conditions and actions from a list and build up what looks like a program, but without having to write code. But that's quite limited in that it's designed for making a very specific it's made for making role-playing games. It's a very specific kind of game that it creates. So what is it about GDevelop which makes it different? And are there still some limitations? Are there still certain kinds of games which it's not able to create?
Yeah. As you mentioned, RPG Maker, this software is made to create a specific kind of game. With GDevelop, the software is made to be flexible enough to create any kind of game, provided it's not too complicated. It must be a two-dimensional game, mostly.
Right.
Maybe the software is a bit more difficult to use at the beginning compared to RPG Maker, because you have to create almost everything that you want in your game. But on the other hand, you are not limited to create a specific kind of game, so you could create an RPG and then add explosion, physics, or even particle. So my goal is to have as less as possible people asking me, I can't create this because of this limitation. I really want everybody to be able to express what they want to do using the software.
Right, and I noticed that a lot of the things which you can create appear to be implemented as plugins or extensions. Is that extensibility what makes it so flexible?
Yeah, the core of the software is composed of some concepts, objects, events, and behaviors that you can add to the objects. Mm-hmm. And then most of the features are provided thanks to extension. Most of the extensions are provided directly with the software because it's easier and I can maintain them. The goal is to have lots of objects and behaviors and events that you can mix to create your game and to ease the development, quickly get something done.
Cool.
So it looks like you have you're looking to build a community of people contributing those kind of plugins. So if someone does come up with an interesting, physics plugin or particle plugin or, some specific plugin, is that right? You would like to have a plugin community, or would you rather have people contribute on the core product itself? How do you see contributions coming in, or are you happy working on this on your own?
In fact, I have some developers that help to create some plugins because it's easier to start by creating plugins for the software. You can copy-paste an existing plugin and start to modify it to create a new one. So what I like is to get help to maintain the software and to provide more and more features to make it easier to create games and to provide features that are maybe difficult to create on your own if you are not a developer. And as the software is entirely open source, anybody who is working on a plugin can easily move to help me on the core of the software because as long as you are writing a plugin, you can easily switch to the core of the software.
So am I right in saying it ultimately generates JavaScript, which is then minified or shrunk down, and then people run that in their browser, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And how efficient? I mean, I know some people complain about the efficiency of generated JavaScript. Do you have any idea of how efficient that is compared to handcrafted JavaScript, or do you focus on the performance of the code that your software is generating?
Performance is surely something that matters because when you are using Deliver, you can either choose to use the native platform or the HTML5 platform, and JavaScript is generated only for the HTML5 platform. So if you want to write a game that is really performance consuming, maybe you better choose the native platform, but you won't be able to play to the game in the browser. As far as JavaScript is concerned, there are optimization already done into the engine of the software, but of course, Handcraft JavaScript could be more performant, more efficient from time to time. But when you're creating a game, you have to make sure to know what is really important in your game. I mean, most of the time you are losing efficiency on things like collision detection. So most of the time you can optimize your game by just using less objects or making sure that you only move objects that are on screen, things like that. And
right.
At the end, the performance of the engine is good enough to make almost anything, I think.
And then you said there's the native export and the JavaScript browser export. What code does the native export generate?
So instead of generating JavaScript, you get a C++ generation that is then compiled into a binary. So this is really, really efficient because in fact you get machine code, compiled code just like you will do if you were creating a professional game.
Right. And does it use SDL underneath or some other library for the low-level graphics calls?
Yeah, it's not SDL, it's SFML, which is a library based on OpenGL. So it's really more efficient because even if all games are two-dimensional games, you benefit from graphical acceleration from the GPU. So the rendering is really efficient. And as you get your events compiled into C++, your game is really, really efficient. And the only downside to this is that you can't export the game to a browser or to mobile phone. No, I hope that I will be able to bring this native platform to maybe iOS or Android later.
So are you looking to have an export that exports out Java and one that exports out Objective-C for iOS, or will you use some other framework for that?
I'd like to have a single code base to maintain because it's easier, of course, and for now there are not too much developers working on gdevelop. So the rendering engine SFML, which is used by gdevelop, can be used on iOS and on Android, but it's quite experimental and not yet finished. So the best thing would be to have this rendering engine working on iOS and Android. That would be the most useful thing for me.
Right.
But I think that maybe if developers who really know Android or iOS development could help, I think that could speed up things a lot.
Of course.
Yeah. It's really cool. How long have you been working on this?
Oh, it's a long project since 2008. So
Wow.
Yeah, 7 years maybe.
Wow.
That's brilliant. It's been great to hear about your project, and I look forward to playing with it myself. I've been using some other tools on other platforms, and I can tell there's been some inspiration from some other tools in GDevelop, and that will actually make it easier for me, and I'm sure others, to transition across from some other proprietary tools. Where can people find out more, and if they want to get involved, what would you ask people? You know, if there was something you really wanted help with right now, where can they go, and what are you really looking for?
Yeah, the most important thing to do is just to type gdevelop in a search engine and to visit the website and download the software. It's available for most operating systems. And if you want to contribute to the software, you can do it using two easy ways. The first one is to write articles and tutorials and the knowledge base on gdevelop, which is on the website. So you can write your own tutorials or articles about how to use the software. You can even contribute to the help to make sure that every feature of the software is documented. And the other way of contributing is to help to translate gdevelop to your language if you speak another language than English. You can go on the website and find the link to help to translate the software. It's really easy because in fact it's done entirely online, and there are lots of translators contributing even one sentence, and so that could be really done quickly. I have the Chinese translation which is being done, and I really look forward to see more language inside the software.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for talking to us, Florian, and we'll keep an eye on the project and look forward to hearing more about it in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now it's time for Command Line Love. And we've had lots of Command Line Love sent in since the last recording. And here's the first one. It's from, we shouldn't read out Twitter handles because they're never easy to read out. C. Hodson89. Thank you, C. Hodson89. And I should probably have read this first. It's passwordstore.org. And it's a command line password manager, which is super useful in these times of everyone trying to be a bit more secure and having super long passwords with numbers and stuff in it. But what it does is it stores your passwords in plain text and then encrypts it with GPG. And you can easily share that between devices via a Git repository or any other sync program. Because it's a GPG encrypted file, you can feel confident and safe that file is okay to share across multiple machines via whatever mechanism you want. And it's also got plugins for browsers and apps for mobile and all that kind of stuff. It's called passwordstore.org.
Yeah, and the command itself is just pass, and they say it's the standard Unix password manager. They've basically taken the Unix philosophy of just being a simple tool that just hooks into other existing tools and does one job well.
Huh.
So it's you.
I like the idea of plain text files encrypted with GPG. I've mentioned this before. I do this myself, but with Vim.
Yeah, I thought you'd like it.
yeah, it's good. I'm not changing now. I'm set in my ways. I'm using Vim and the GPG key. What about you, Joe? What do you do about passwords?
What do I do about them? Well, not LastPass. I just accept that there's certain things I can only log into on certain machines, basically. So on my phone, I can log into certain things, and then PayPal, I generally don't. For example, I just kind of do that on one of my laptops, and it's a horrible mess. And this sounds like it could actually be the solution that I've been waiting for, because I'm very reluctant to use LastPass, even though it gets rave reviews from everyone. There's just something about it that I don't like. Whereas this sounds like I've got a lot of control over it myself, and I can use my own server and stuff. So.
Is the thing you don't like the fact that it's stored on someone else's computer?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, I don't like that very much either. And in fact, there are tools for migrating from LastPass and KeePass and all sorts of other password managers to password
Oh, really?
as well. Yeah,
like you can dump out your LastPass into this.
You take the CSV file that you can download, and there's a script which will import it into.
Well, now you see that's a +1 for LastPass and for this thing, because the fact that LastPass lets you dump the stuff out as a CSV and that this thing can pull it in, everyone's a winner.
Cool.
Yes, well done.
And now it's time for your feedback. Nigel Verity emailed in to say,
I didn't expect to hear a discussion on Y2K ever again. Then it comes up on your show. One thing that really bugs me is the way I've heard the Y2K issue described in the non-tech media almost as a con devised by the IT industry to milk its customers. The fact that the problem was very real and it's a tribute to the IT industry just shows how few problems there were in the event. I suppose we were victims of our own success. In the late 90s, I worked for a big stockbroking company, developing applications in COBOL and Fortran and on VAX VMS. Every date field was defined in the 6-character format. It was a disaster waiting to happen, but right up until the 11th hour, there was always something more important to work on. The fix was easy enough to implement, but the fact remains that in an environment where the customers had to be paid a fixed number of days after they sold their shares, to have done nothing could have brought the company down. There's plenty of time to fix the 2038 problem, but I think you can guarantee that there'll be a mad panic of activity in 2037.
Yeah, definitely. I worked on SAP back in the late 90s through the 2000s, and we were just super busy, and all the consultants that worked at the company were on ridiculous amounts of money working in all these companies who were upgrading their systems or replacing their legacy systems with something which was Y2K compliant, and and then when it came to the day, it was like Nigel says, it was a non-event because everything had been replaced at vast cost to all the companies concerned. It wasn't like, we'll just do a couple of patches and download the source from GitHub and change it and upload and we're done. It was a vast amount of money spent by a huge number of companies in order to not have that problem. And hopefully, because we've seen 2038 coming, maybe we'll be on top of it. But yeah, I feel the same as Nigel. I suspect there'll be a flurry of activity in the last couple of years.
A. James Lewis also emailed us.
Just a small observation regarding your NTP command line love. If you install the NTP package on a desktop, you don't need to do anything. Possibly go to System, Settings, Date and Time to make sure the box labelled automatically is ticked. On a server, you may need to do more on the command line, but I think you missed a critical fact. If the time is more than a small set amount away when NTP starts, around 1 minute, it will give up and never bring your clock into sync.
Oh.
If you don't run NTP all the time, you might need to be careful of this and make sure your clock is correct before running NTP as a daemon. Interesting.
Yes. So, yeah, perhaps the command we talked about before is the ideal thing to run before you start the daemon to make sure you get it in sync in the first place.
Right.
Yes. We also had several tweets from listeners after our episode 12 was released, which we released a bit late. I'm sorry about that. We had computer trouble getting it mixed. My laptop decided to break. Yes, unfortunately, it looks like that when we released, a certain Mr. Alan Pope may have put the OGG file in the MP3 feed by mistake, which confused the hell out of iTunes.
Oh no.
We had a few iOS users who the iTunes had downloaded the file and didn't know what to do with it.
Brilliant.
And I did then change the file to the correct MP3 file. But if it had already downloaded it, I'm not sure that iTunes was clever enough to.
Yeah, I think it should. If it's a completely different file.
Okay.
Go and get it.
Someone did say that they were having problems still, but they managed to listen anyway. So if you are having problems with that episode,
I'm so sorry.
The feed now does have the MP3 file, or if you go to the website, you can download it directly.
On the flip side, it's your own fault for using non-free software. So
yeah, freedom haters.
Yeah, you say you can go to the website and download it, but you can't if you've got an iPhone, can you? Because you can't. You can stream it, but you can't save it to your file system.
I'll take your word for it. I've never used an iPhone.
Well, a friend of mine.
Then.
A friend of yours, of course.
It is, honestly. Yeah, exactly.
And that's all of your feedback. Thank you, everyone.
That's all for episode 14. We'll be back next week when we'll have more news, comment, and discussion.
And maybe interviews.
Oh, yes. Maybe we'll have more interviews.
Yeah, so if you have any suggestions for people we should interview, then send us an email, show@ubuntupodcast.org.
Yes.
And thank you, Joe, so much
thanks very much.
Joining us.
That's right. It's been a pleasure.
Sorry you had to come back 2 weeks in a row, but you know.
Oh, well, you know.
I guess we'll have the normal team back together next time.
Let's hope so.
And stop recording.